I'd like to call our March 12th, 2012 study session to order. May I have roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Theed is excused. Mrs. Buckley? Here. Mrs. Kraut?
Here.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Here.
Mr. Kudrick?
Present.
Mrs. Funderburg?
Here.
And Mrs. Beard, present.
Please stand for pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just roll. That was close. You probably would have laughed. Almost missed the chair.
I'm picking you up, Richard.
Next, I need approval of the agenda.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion we approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Kraut. Any questions or? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Feedback in the line.
We are.
Yeah, seems loud.
Because yours may be pointed too close to that other one.
Nope.
Is the portable one
That's
turned on
very
somewhere?
strange.
I doubt it.
Not
We'll let
sure.
it. He should be able to fix it.
Okay, next on the agenda is the teacher evaluation updates.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight, our first agenda item is a discussion about employee accountability. As everyone is aware, our state legislature has made some changes to increase employee accountability. I'm happy to report that prior to any legislative action, Romulus Community Schools took action to increase employee accountability as well. One of the mandates that I had back in 2006 when the board hired me was to make sure that we had an evaluation process and procedure for all employee groups, which wasn't the case at that time, and that situation was addressed. But the board also wanted information, particularly to teachers, about how some of the new changes have impacted teaching in Romulus and everywhere else in the state, and what kinds of what our data looks like specifically. So I've asked Rebecca to prepare a report, and she has a nice multicolored handout that I'm passing around, and that she's going to review with us and answer any of your questions as well about teacher evaluation.
There are handouts on the back of the table if you all would like one.
So the first thing I want to talk about just a little bit today is I know that everybody here has heard about all the changes that have gone on in legislation, and you know, there are so many changes that have occurred. What I have for you today is a very simple and easy to read, and it's for myself as well, what the former law said and now what the new law says with regard to teacher tenure. So I put this together. I don't need to go through each and every one of them with you. I'm just going to highlight a few of the key ones. As Mr. Weiss had pointed out, we started doing annual evaluations with our teachers a couple of years before this legislation even started humming. So our teachers were right on board with it. We've been very collaborative with them in that, as well as all of our other bargaining groups for evaluation. Some of the big things that have changed in the blue area, the tenure rules under evaluation. We went from a 4-year probationary period to now a 5-year probationary period for new teachers. Displacing probationary teachers. Previous law said that no matter what, if you're replacing teachers or moving teachers out, you cannot have a probationary teacher still employed when a non-probationary teacher gets laid off. That was my info. I'm sorry. I thought I turned this off. I think I turned it on. That has now changed. The new law states that brings the effectiveness ratings in, which we're going to talk about in a minute. That's the deciding factor on teacher displacement. Evaluating probationary teachers, I'm the second one up from the bottom in the blue area. In previous years, the tenure law required us to have annual year-end performance evaluations, indeed for probationary teachers, but there are some very strict rules as far as the timeline between those evaluations, and you had to follow quite a roadmap to get to the end result. The new law states that annual year-end evaluations are based on multiple classroom evaluations, period. And that's part of our evaluation system as well. Jumping down into the red area, I just wanted to point out remediation. And again, this is the changes, big changes in the Teacher Tenure Act and how they apply to Romulus. It used to be that there was no statutory limit for teachers to accomplish their IDP goals. When a teacher is struggling in the classroom, having a difficult time being an effective teacher, we're obligated to put them on an IDP, which is an individual development plan. So we individualize a development plan, we work in collaboration. None of that has changed, we continue to do that. But the difference now is that there is a limit to how long a teacher will be on an IDP, and that goes no more than 180 days. They have to show improvement towards their goal. Discipline, I'm down in this blue area, or the green area now. It used to be that for a teacher, based on tenure code, that you could not demote a teacher. You couldn't discipline a teacher of more than 3 days of unpaid time. That was considered a demotion. The new tenure law states that to suspend without pay for 15 or more consecutive days, or to refuse compensation of that equal amount for 30 days. So there's a little bit of change in there. And then the standard for discipline, this is a lot of conversation talked a lot about just cause. That was the standard for discipline for teachers based on the Tenure Act, as well as our contractual language. It has now been changed to arbitrary and capricious. And I just put a little asterisk down there because I had a hard time trying to figure out what arbitrary and capricious meant. What does that mean? So I just put a little note there. It's still being figured out, but that is the general definition of arbitrary and capricious. Any questions on the amendments to the Teacher Tenure Act?
Madam Chair, I got a question for,
Mr. Cootery, you have
it says non-renewing a probationary teacher. It says notice of non-renewal 15 days before the end of the school year, written notice effective. Okay, so are we saying that supersedes the contracts they have for them?
Actually, we're going to get into that in a minute.
Okay.
Because that was an area that was really confusing for me. What can override the contract, what can't override the contract, because there are some things that can and there are some
I
things that
know
can't.
every year we usually, because of student enrollment and stuff, and that's why I was just wondering, are we allowed to wait longer?
So jump to the next page, and that's exactly where we're at.
I had a question, Madam Chair.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you. Not sure where it would fall in here, or if this is just an administrative procedural question. How are we, and if so, how and when are we going to be notified as a board who is on plan of actions, who is up for tenure, and those kind of things?
I believe that would be a policy of the board, because as it stands right now, when a teacher is on an IDP, that there's nothing in our board policy that indicates that the board is made aware of the IDPs. I can tell you how many we have on IDPs and the length of time that they're on them.
Okay, the reason I bring that up is because several months ago, there was a discussion here at the table about letting the board know before tenure was automatically granted to teachers.
Correct, and that's still our plan, is to bring that to the
Yeah,
board.
that's why I asked when.
In March or April.
Okay.
Who those teachers are and what our recommendations are.
Okay. Because I understand that's a personnel matter, so it would probably come to us under a confidential label, and, I'm good with that, but I just
Okay.
wanted to know if and how that was gonna
Well,
happen.
it's really, as far as tenure goes, it's a board prerogative. There are districts, my former district had kind of an annual event where, teachers who attained tenure, their names were listed, they were invited to the board meeting. And the board could do it that way. That was never the history in Romulus, and we never really discussed changing it, but this year it was our plan to let you know at least, and then you can decide what we want to do going forward.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms.
I
Buckley.
have one question. Rebecca, when does this take effect? Did I miss something? When does the new law go into effect? It already has.
Oh, yes, it already
January?
has.
Was it just,
July 19th, 2011.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
One of those immediate effect things our friends in the Republican Party did.
right. As soon as that was signed, as soon as that bill was signed by the governor, it went into effect. Now, there are some savings clause issues, and that's what the next page is going to address. There's, in addition to the changes to the Tenure Act, there's Public Act 103, which amends the Public Employment Relations Act, or PARA. So that's the regulations under which we collectively bargain. So they've added 7 additional prohibited subjects of bargaining, and those prohibited subjects are now listed here. And you're going to see some of those prohibited subjects are also addressed in the changes to the tenure law. So what I've put down here for you, and myself as well, is a column of immediate implementation and then a column of savings clause. We need to wait until the current collective bargaining agreement expires before we can change that language in their contract. So the contract prevails is the answer to the question that Mr. Kudrick had in 3 situations. Layoff and recall. So we will continue to follow layoff and recall rights based on the collective bargaining agreement through August 16th of 2013 with REA. The annual performance evaluations for teachers and administrators. Yes, we're going to hold off, but as I had mentioned before, we've been in collaboration with our teachers and our administrators in all of our units. So we've been doing annual evaluations for few years now. And then the third one that has the savings clause is the annual classroom observations for probationary teachers. But again, we've been doing that for many years.
You ought to do that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's the thing that we have to hold off on implementing is that 60-day period. You know, that 60-day between the 2 evaluations, that whole language piece. But we're already doing multiple observations in there anyway. The immediate implementation is the placement of teachers. So where we're putting our teachers, placing our teachers in the classrooms. Discharge and discipline under the Teacher Tenure Act, which I put a little bit more dialogue on that first page for you. And then merit pay for teachers and administrators. And then parental notification. It's immediate, but the parental notification is that clause when a teacher is rated ineffective for 2 consecutive years, the district has to send out a letter to all of the students that teacher will be instructing the following year that indicates that teacher has been rated ineffective for 2 consecutive years. That is not that is a prohibited subject of bargaining. So obviously it can't happen for a couple of years. 2015-16 is the earliest that could occur.
I'm not laughing at you. It's just, teachers just become a punching bag. Let's just destroy careers,
I have a couple of questions in regards to the parental notification piece. So are you saying that the teacher actually stays in their job and it's just that families are notified for that particular student that they're going to be taking their class in the fall?
Yes and no, because remember we've got a right of assignment. We have the placement rights. Things are very dependent on where we're at economically and where our district is at. You know, if we have teachers that are rated more effective, you know, that have an effective rating, and that teacher has an ineffective rating, and we're in a downsize, we're in a layoff scenario, we're obligated to lay off that ineffective teacher. So yes and no, to answer your question. Is it possible for the scenario to play out like you've mentioned, Ms. Funderburg? Absolutely, it could happen. But we're going to work really hard so that that doesn't happen in Romulus.